After World War I, Germany was left weak, battered, bruised, and nothing but a former shadow of what it once was. In this post war period, a group called the Nazis would take control of Germany. You probably know the rest from here. They take over Austria. Then, during the Mutiny Agreement, France and Britain betray Czechoslovakia. Then the Germans are able to coax Hungary and Romania into an alliance. And then they cooperate with the Soviets to invade Poland. This is the start of the Second World War. The Germans immediately blitzed through the Benelux, cut the French and British off at Dunkirk, and managed to do what the Imperial German army could not have done during the First World War. They proceed to invade Yugoslavia to help the Italians with their Greek situation. They established the Croatian independent state, which would proceed to do things that would even disgust them in their own hypocrisy. And then they betrayed the Soviet Union. But this was their final mistake. That, and also the Japanese bombing Pearl Harbor. This called the Americans into the war. And with that, the Germans were finished. Even before a single soldier's foot touched the sandy beaches of Normandy, the Germans were defeated. And yet, I will not ask the question on what if they weren't defeated. It will be ruled by the people.
Es geht durch die Welt ein Geflüster, Arbeiter, hörst du es nicht? Das sind die Stimmen der Kriegsminister. Arbeiter, hörst du es nicht? Es flüstern die Kohle- und Stahlproduzenten, es flüstern die chemische Kriegsindustrie, es flüstert von all ihren Kontinenten. Krieg, Krieg, Volksdemokratie. Arbeiter, Bauern, Staat, den Faschisten, Deutsch und Gewinn aus der Bahn. Wir preisen den Atomen, wir wählen den Parisen, den anderen Kuban. Ganz weiter Roten, wandern der Arbeit, auf jeden Anfang, auf jeder Fabrik. Dann steigt aus den Gründern der alten Gesellschaft die sozialistische Volksrepublik.
The divergence point is in 1915. The Social Democratic Party has just approved a bill that will provide more funding towards the imperialist war. This is unpopular with the leftists of Germany, who see this as simping for the imperialist cause. Eventually, the Democratic Socialists and the Communists both form their own opposition party called the Socialist Party of Germany. Fast forward to 1918, and it's revolution time, baby! Except that it's not. You see, famously, Rosa Luxemburg and I think Karl Liebknecht both protested revolution at the point in time of 1918. Rather, in this alternate timeline, the revolution starts after the Treaty of Versailles has been signed. One of the immediate reactions of the British and French was, well, panic. The French would immediately attempt a mobilization. However, due to socialist mutinies in the army contradicting their own propaganda, this is a failure. And if anything, the French government proves to be more reactionary than the Germans were. Either way, the Rhineland for the next few months is about to get super chaotic, and honestly, I'm not well enough equipped to deal with this, so let's move on. The Spartacists would treat minorities better than the German Empire, and definitely better than Nazi Germany. Speaking of those two, the Spartacists would take a very hardline anti-reactionary position on the two, and start to make them illegal very early on in its existence. The Polish-Soviet War still happens in this timeline, but with the entry of Germany, it means a definite defeat for the Poles. And this results in Poland getting turned into a puppet state of the two powers. Speaking of which, Trotsky takes power in the Soviet Union instead of Stalin. This changes quite a bit, but not the general events. Those stay the same, they're just altered differently. We would see a more aggressive Soviet Union because instead of socialism under one state, we see world revolution becoming more popular. We still would see the Soviet Union attempt to re-annex its old lands, but it may also go expansionist due to the more aggressive nature and go after Turkey in a war, perhaps temporarily allying itself with Greece. The Soviets wouldn't be as oppressive as they were under Stalin, but it still wouldn't be a fun time being under them, because the Soviet Union was just a poorly disguised Russian Empire. Or at least that's how I see it. Also, with some intervention, Hungary falls back under communism. A similar thing happens in Finland. And Bulgaria joins because why not? With all of this aggressive communism about, the Little Entente decides to form an anti-communist pact. But then they get invaded. The Treaty of Prague sees harsh terms placed on the Little Entente. One of these terms is an independent Croatia, which immediately descends into civil war between two factions. A, fascists, and B, fascists who just call themselves communists. Italy also decides to say that a civil war can happen there, and the communists go, wanna bet? But as Newton once said, I did not say this, but every time the left or right rises in popularity, the opposition equally rises. I bring this up because France and Britain turn fascist. France decides to pressure the Belgians into giving them Wallonia, and then the Dutch do the same and also turn fascist. With all this fascism going around, they all decide it's appropriate to get together and form the Second Entente, which is a counterweight to the communists, which form their own faction called the International Comintern. Now, obviously, we're leading up to World War II, so let's just cut straight into it, shall we? The French attempt to build the Maginot Line, and it's a success. They basically have a wall stopping Germany from simply blitzkrieging into them. However, the Dutch did not build the Maginot Line, so they get blitzkrieged, which leaves France pretty much open for invasion. The soldiers decide to mutiny and join the communists against their own country, and this leads to the collapse of France. This also leads to the Iberian countries being forced to fend for themselves, as no aid is really coming to them. Meanwhile, in the Balkans, and also the Middle East, I guess, it's all out chaos. So Yugoslavia is busy trying to kill the Croats, but then Italy finishes up whatever was remaining of the fascists and jumps in. Also, Bulgaria is there. The Romanians decide to revolt under the Iron Guard, and that's a whole issue. Meanwhile, in Anatolia, it's primarily a battle between the Turks and the Kurds. But ultimately, the fascists are defeated. This leaves Britain as the last bastion of fascism in Europe. And soon, people start to realize that they're the last bastion of fascism in Europe. And soon this leads to the public questioning if they're even able to win World War II. And then London finally falls to the Spartacists. Germany, after World War I, was left battered, bruised, and economically crippled. In this post-war period, a group called the Spartacists would take power. And under them, Germany would experience a renaissance. It would collaborate with the Soviet Union, help fund revolutionary ideals in other countries, and united under all of these banners, they were able to defeat the fascist powers of Europe. And yet, it was not Germany alone who defeated them. It was not the Soviets alone who defeated them. No, it was the combined power of the Germans, Soviets, Hungarians, Bulgarians, Czechs, everyone united under the Comintern, who fought against the fascist powers. And this is where our story ends. just real quick, want to mention Munatink's video. It's way better than mine, so please go watch it and support them. I might also do some more videos on this timeline, specifically focusing on Asia and Africa, and also some of the other countries that I kind of didn't really mention, like what happened to Greece or Austria. But yeah, this is really where I'm going to leave it at, so bye.